All right, today on the Big Serious Show, I got with me my friend Connor McGovern. Connor went to Mizzou to play football in college and then played 4 years for the Broncos, 4 years for the Jets. And he is currently a free agent coming back from an injury, which will hit. Connor, man, thanks for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be on here.
Yeah, man, where am I talking to you today?
So I'm actually in Wisconsin at my in-laws' house. My dad and brother are racing these little cars called Radicals. They're like enclosed wheel, high downforce, English made little race car. And they're over at Road America in Elkhart Lake. My in-laws are from Oshkosh, so I'm a state away from you right now.
Nice, man. That's sweet. That sounds fun.
Yeah, it's something I'll be doing a lot more when I officially retire. But yeah, they were a family of racers. It's what I before I ever got into ball sports, we were dirt bike racers, BMX racers. The X Games were our Super Bowl, and then I got too big, so I had to find a different avenue to do that. We still snowboard and ski and do all that fun stuff. But yeah, we transitioned from two wheels to four, and that's what we're doing now. So.
I briefly mentioned you're coming back from an injury, man. You want to explain exactly what happened?
Yep. So 2 seasons ago, I had a contact MCL and PFL. They tore right at the same, where they kind of connect. The little ligament MPFL is what connects the patella on the medial side. And because your patella is held on by four ligaments. And then my MCL. They were both partials, and so they're pretty bad, but not, doctors really don't like doing MCLs. It's one where if you do it too tight, your knee's never going to be the same, and your body can heal it pretty well itself. So I go down to Andrews, and it's kind of funny. So I go into, I'll tell it quickly. So I'll go into Andrews, the fellow's in there. He sees my MRI. My MCL looks like crab meat, and he's doing the valgus or whatever it's called, and it's just moving. And he was like, "Oh, you need surgery." I was like, "All right, well, let's wait for Andrews to come in, like the reason
Yeah.
I'm here." And I was like, "Stop doing that to my knee. Like, it
Yeah,
doesn't
that
feel very
doesn't
good."
that doesn't feel good.
No, like,
And for
yeah, like
context,
let's
like
let,
anybody listening who doesn't know who Dr. Andrews is, he's like the knee guy.
yeah,
He's the dude that you want fixing your knee so you can keep playing.
yeah. And so Andrews comes in, and if you do know Andrews, he's a talker. He loves to talk. He's retired now, but he truly loves, every aspect of his job and just in talking. So he had a conversation the whole time he's palpating my knee and just grabbing it and touching it and seeing if I wince, right? And seeing if he's part of the conversation is, he's just a nice guy and wants to know stuff about you, but he also is trying to distract me so I can't be the tough guy and not wince if I'm in pain, right? So he palpated, like literally 15-minute conversation. He was handing me the whole time, and never once did it hurt. And so obviously it didn't move. So he goes, "All right, well, I think you're good." And the fellow's eyes are all big. No way is this guy walking out of here without surgery. And I was like, "No surgery." Nope. He was like, "Clearly it's healing." He's like, "If it wasn't healing, I wouldn't be able to palpate like this. MCLs, hate doing them. You'll be all right." It's like, all right. So next season, played my entire season, have a pretty good season, and nothing happens. And he's great. Go into last season, knees feeling fantastic, body's feeling good. Start out probably my best season that I'd played, and we get coming off by playing Dexter Lawrence, and I just got off of playing Jordan Davis, who's another just big body, freaky athletic D lineman, had a pretty good game. And so, I think Dexter's pretty tuned up. He was ready to go. We were talking,
Yeah,
getting
does he
after it from the
does
start.
does he talk a lot of crap out there? He seems like a big talker.
When he gets going, right? So like
Yeah.
when he's a guy that, like, if you get him going, he's gonna turn it on and he's gonna start talking. And from the jump, he was ready to go. He and I were going at it, right? And got me a couple times on some passes. I got a couple times on some runs, and he was just bull rushing. He does the same where he's two-hand bull to one-hand bull. And you wouldn't think someone's strong enough to like two-hand to what, but the dude is so strong. And so I'm sitting on all these bowls, and I'm sitting and I'm like, I got to get lower. So I get super low, sit down, goes to extend to one hand, foot gets caught in the MetLife turf, and I dislocate my kneecap again. Well, this time my MPFL tore on the patella side. So now my MPFL has been torn on both sides. And with that, just the instability of my MCL, partially tear my MCL again. So this time I have to have surgery. So I had a reconstruction of the MPFL, repair on the MCL, and had some other little stuff done. So coming back from a pretty big knee thing, and honestly, free agency last year didn't go quite the way I thought it was. So I got hurt. Called my wife. I was like, "Hey, we're done, and that's it. We're retiring." And she was like, "Okay." And then my agent got, that's not happening. He was like, "We've got guys like, as as your incredible career of coming into the playoffs and balling out." I was actually talking to Aaron Rodgers about you the last season, and anything can happen. So I'm
Yeah.
rehabbing, taking it slow, enjoying my family, not doing OTAs with the team this year, and wait until I really feel 100% to go and join a team. So
Well, that's the ticket, man. You already have all that tape out there anyway. It's
yeah,
if you can
yeah,
park it, if you can park it and just stay in shape till the end of training camp, or even like week 1, week 2, like someone gets hurt, they need you.
yep,
That does a lot of the negotiation for the contract
yep,
right there.
yeah, a
And then
lot
you're
more
coming in
leverage.
fresh. Dude, it feels
Right.
so I cannot emphasize how good it feels on the body not doing a training camp.
Oh, I
Man,
can't. I'm pretty excited about it.
like
I'm
training
pretty
camp, I
excited about
get training camp for like young guys, but for older vets, man, it's unbalanced in what it does for you and the benefit. Like I get the whole point of, practicing as a team, ironing it out kinks and all that stuff. But man, I think the coaches needed to take a way better approach to just veteran guys instead of veteran big name guys. It seemed like they always took, if there was a veteran big name guy and he was like a top 5 contract on the team, like they're making sure that guy was resting, and it always seemed like
it.
that
Yeah.
guy had an easy training camp. But if you were outside that top 5 salary spot, like you just didn't get that same kind of love, at least from the coaches that I played with. And I played on some pretty decent contract deals. It wasn't like I was a low paid guy. It was just like, oh, yep, Jared's good. We're just going to keep him out there. And
Yeah.
like, I know how you, and I know your mindset as a player, man. You're a team guy. You're not going to go tell coach like, hey, I need a couple days to get right. That's just not how we think as linemen usually. We're like, we got to be there for the team type of thing. But man, it would be nice. And then you were talking about the MetLife turf. I've played at MetLife a couple times. I don't know, when was the last time they replaced the turf there?
So I think they technically got new turf. It was last year or the year before. And, it was weird because it seemed, I've played the last 4 seasons on that turf and it's not good. I mean, no turf's good. That turf, it'll be the same turf as another stadium, but there's just something about MetLife that it doesn't matter. I don't think what turf you put down. I don't know. There's some out of earth thing about that place, and as long as it's turf, it's going to get people, and it gets a lot of people, and it's the weirdest thing. And I don't know why. I don't even like when and it's been weird that like most of our home games, if you go back and look, like this is a crazy thing. Almost every home game the last 2 or 3 years, it's been like raining, like some sort of moisture. And I don't know if the turf just like the moisture honestly made it feel grippier, which was the weirdest thing. And I don't understand why, if it had something to do with how the rubber was releasing when it was wet versus dry and whatnot. But I'm telling you, every home game in the last 2 years, it was pretty much raining. And it just that turf when it's wet is it's even grippier, which doesn't make sense, but it is. And yeah, it's horrible. But back to the camp thing, I agree. And it's when they do it, the starters go 5 plays, and then the twos go 4, the threes go 3, and then the starters are back up for 3 plays. You're like, I'm doing double the amount of work, and I'm twice NFL age, twice the guy that's doing 3 plays. But yeah, I think there could be some more managing in there, and I think some teams do some of it, some teams don't. But like you said, like the O line, going to the O line's so hard because you need to be a cohesive unit, and so you can't have 3 of you out there and the 2 guys resting. You're not those 3 guys are getting individual reps, but you're not getting as a team. And then I played with all these young quarterbacks, and being a center, it's hey, if that young quarterback's out there, you're out there. And you're like, gosh, like the young quarterback needs more reps. So then I get more reps. But yeah, so I'm excited to to do what I need to do to get 100% healthy and get my body feeling good and come back and have a good season next year. And we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, no doubt. And for a little added context, Connor is a center. So he is like the quarterback of the offensive line. He has to read the defense, make mic points, identifications, and all the communication up front kind of starts with Connor. And so, to what he was saying, the coach wants the center in there to be able to nail down that communication and go from there. And it's tough because, you just don't get the body care that is necessarily needed at all times. What was it like, going into last year, especially with all the hype? Man, I'm sure you've been asked this a bunch of times too, but there was, just high expectations. Team was looking sweet. You guys signed Rodgers. It looked like the Jets were finally going to be able to turn the corner. And then, obviously 4 plays into the season, drops back and tears his Achilles. Like, I know it's just like a next play mentality, but what was it like out there when it happened?
So when it, yeah. So I mean, the hype was awesome. So it was the first time in my career where I was like on a team that was truly Super Bowl or bust, right? Like when we were in Denver, it was like, hey, let's get to the playoffs and maybe we can make a run and something cool can happen, right? And it was always like, hey, we're going to be a good team. We have this solid defense. The offense will win us some games, and we can see where we're at the end of the season. Like this was a true like we're going to the Super Bowl, and if we don't, like you all should be ashamed of yourself. And this is a terrible season. So we get first game, 4 plays in. He goes down, and none of us knew what had happened, right? Because he kind of, he sat there, he looked off into the distance, he got up, he walked off the field. So we're like, okay, is this a high ankle sprain? Is this, did he like get like a tibia or fibia thing? Like we didn't know what it was, and I don't think anyone thought Achilles because it just and going back and looking at it, it's pretty obvious. The guy grabs his foot, he plants off. But at the time when you're you're trying to watch the video board to see what was happening, and none of us really knew. So I think it was like 2 or 3 series later, I'm standing there about to go out, and I just happened to be standing next to our head coach, Sala. And I can hear him say, "Oh, update on Rodgers." He's talking to the mic, and he's like, "Achilles? Are you kidding me? Achilles?" And at that moment, I was just like, and I'm about like they're punting, right? And I
Yeah.
just heard Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles, and I'm like, "Oh my god!" Like I got to lock back in, but I'm excited for every season, but this was the season. I got Aaron Rodgers back there. I was like, "This is it." And 4 plays in, it was devastating, but we ended up winning that Bills game with a incredible punt return and first overtime and all that, and still started off the season pretty strong without Aaron. But yeah, it was devastating. It was that feeling was worth that big of a term. It was devastating for sure.
Yeah, that's wild. You probably won't ever forget standing next to Salah and hearing him mutter those
No,
words. Like,
absolutely not. And I'm glad it was kind of just me and not like we had some younger. I looked over and I was like, all right, well, here we go. Pulled the chin strap up and tried to
yeah,
win a football game. So
no doubt, just got to go out there and just keep doing your job no matter what
yeah,
happens.
put that in the back of your head and deal with
Yeah,
that later. Unpack
yeah,
that one later. So
exactly. They're probably still trying to unpack that one as an organization.
yeah,
What?
it was tough. It was
Yeah.
tough.
What were like the biggest differences you saw between Denver and New York with the Jets?
When we were at Denver, it was kind of that whole transition period of going from the Bolin ownership to Elway and Ellis, kind of trying to make it get, or, making the team ready to be sold. So they could, and when we were there, like a lot of these like full-time employees went to salaried employees, and that family atmosphere that was there, that the stories that I heard from, the Derek Wolves, Paradis, like how it was the 2, 3, 4, 5 years prior to like myself getting there. And then you came my second year, third year, and it was a lot more family orientated. And then you could tell that they had kind of gone to a business to make sure that bottom line was good and the team looked like the best it possibly could to be sold. So, and it felt like more of a business there. And the Jets, the ownership with the Johnsons is more of a family atmosphere. They're not worried about the bottom line. They're not worried about, saving money here. Or, they have every intent, and the Broncos do too, but especially at this time, like right now, there's no expense spared to be a first-class organization. Like they want to do everything they possibly can to win as many football games as they can. And with what they're pouring in, it's so hard to understand why what is luring over the Jets, why they can't win, because they are doing everything they possibly can to be a first-class organization. And so I think it's just that family atmosphere that happens when you have a family that owns a team versus a team that is getting ready to be sold, and now you're a business. So, and I was there right after that Super Bowl hangover, and it was a pretty heavy hangover in Denver. So yeah, I'd say just the biggest is that family atmosphere. And I'm sure Denver now with the Waltons owning it and the family owning the team again, and they're not worried about the bottom line again, because that's just not how you win football games. So I'm sure it's gone back to that in Denver. But when we were there, it's definitely a business for sure, in my opinion, anyways.
Yeah, I can see that. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think from my times, just the difference between what you explained. Because Arizona is pretty business. I feel like every team tries to make it seem like it's this family culture thing, but you can tell whenever free agency rolls around what they do and how they build, how they
Yeah.
draft, and you can see where everything is. Especially, I feel like especially after the draft. If you look back and see what they did in the draft, you're like, okay, we're trying. This team's trying to win now, or this team's trying to win
Yep.
5 years down the road, whatever it is. How was
Yep.
Saleh as a head coach?
I think he's a great head coach. He is a true leader. He's my best head coach was Kubiak, and he Saul had been on a lot of staffs with Kubiak, so there was definitely an aspect of stuff that they shared and that Salah had taken from Kubiak. And so I'd say, Salah's, probably one of the, he is an X's and O's guy, but he's a true believer in, as a defensive coach, his whole motto is keep it really simple and let the guys go make the plays. And I think that's a little easier on defense than it is offense, but that's his whole philosophy is let the players play. Let's keep it simple so that they're incredibly confident. They know what calls to make, and they can just go out and play with their hair on fire. And so that, to have a team like that, it's just pure leadership and getting them to buy into maximum effort, minimal thinking, just go out and fly around and play. So that's definitely the type of head coach he is. And there is a way to do that on offense, but you can't just run 5 runs and have 10 passes. And, even though them against every single front, every single look, every single blitz, this is not how the NFL works. But so, the offense is getting there. And obviously with Aaron, it's incredible. And so, yeah, he's a really good head coach and a really good leader, a true leader. So,
Yeah, which is I feel like you want that leader as your head coach. Like you want a
when you get
guy.
like a true X's and O guy as a head coach,
Yeah, it doesn't
it's
work,
tough.
man. You want.
No.
I always like after watching like the Ted Lasso series, I was like,
Yeah.
I was thinking that there's got to be some team like eventually. And I don't think Salah's like a Ted like he's definitely not Ted Lasso. Like
No,
he has a
not.
good knowledge of football. He's a great defensive mind.
Yeah.
But it would be interesting if a team just made a crazy hire like that with someone who was just truly a team manager. Like they were a
Yep.
coach. Like they oversaw the team. Like their whole purpose was to unite the team and just get the best out of everybody, completely delegate the offense to the offensive coordinator, defense to the defensive coordinator. And then like the training staff and the strength staff, let those guys, all the sports science guys, get together and formulate the plan on practice workloads and repetitions and all that stuff. Because there's so much like dogma in the NFL of what just like a practice day should look like, what a training camp day should look like. There's
Yep.
little variation. Like I played on 5 different teams and the schedule was more or less the same everywhere. It just seemed like there was always kind of the same blueprint. And you hear of guys like going in, like coaches trying to change it up or do a practice on Saturday instead of a walkthrough on Saturday and a walkthrough on Friday instead of practice, just like stuff like that. And I feel like that's just kind of missing the boat on everything because, you don't want to practice 2 days before the game or the day before the game, especially when you already feel beat up.
Yeah, and I think there's so much tradition in the NFL, but could it be? And I mean, theoretically, I know Ted Lasso is a TV show, but theoretically, it'd be the same in soccer, right? You have your traditions, and it's what you do, and it's you have sports science guys come in and performance staff, and they want to change stuff up, right? But then the old guys are like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. And it's so you do battle with the crusty old vets like myself and you, and when you've done something for 8, 9, 10 years, like you don't want to change that up. Like, this is how I play football, but also it's, and that's more in reference to like trying to do like a more of a run through on a Saturday, because science says you shouldn't take a full day off before your whatever. There's no way I want to do anything but eat donuts, drink coffee, and do a walkthrough on Saturday. Like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. That's what I'm doing the day before a game, right? And
Right.
whether that's good, bad, or whatever, it's what my brain needs to go get myself ready to go to a battle on Sunday. And so I do think they run into the aspect of the head coach wants to run one way, the vets like it this way, the science says this. They're trying to morph everything, and in my experience, I've had a bunch of new head coaches and a bunch of new strength staff. They come in that first year, they're trying to do all this stuff, all this new stuff, this revolutionary stuff. And the players are pushing back. They don't get the results they want. And then they just go right back to what they've been doing because it's what people just do. And and I think that it'd be fascinating to see like a true team manager as a head coach, like you were saying, and just, truly getting the best out of every single person and what would happen. It'd be fascinating.
It would be, but I don't think we'll see it anytime soon. It's
No,
it's
too much tradition.
Yeah. And is everything so short term oriented,
Yeah,
it's a win now mentality. Just like you were saying,
absolutely.
if something comes in, or, new coach comes in, new, strength coach, whatever it is, and they're trying to put something new out there, they, only get a short time to try out whatever experiment they're bringing, and then it gets scrapped quick if it doesn't work. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
there's no long-term commitment to that kind of stuff. And it's
No,
so weird, especially with all the sports science staff that are on teams now. Like, from my experience, like, those guys just seemed like they were always like had a lot of good stuff, and they just have to sit on it. Like, a lot of times, a lot of that stuff wouldn't be like implicated. Like, they'd always be measuring workloads. When you go out to practice, you would always have the little GPS unit. So you'd see like total output, and it never met. And you're like, I'm an offensive lineman. This isn't affecting anything that you're going to do to, like, you're not going to look at this and then start, oh yeah, next week we're adjusting the workload like this. No, it's not. That's not going to happen. They're just gathering data for the sake of gathering data. And maybe that
100%
saves their job at the end of the day or something. I don't know, but
the amount of data that they have that they don't use absolutely blows my mind. I don't know how many servers of millions of data they have, but it's, and I always, in my experience, and it's kind of always been like a hindsight deal. They'll go through the season, they won't listen to the data, and then the season's done, and they're, it's January, February, they have nothing to do. Free agency doesn't start till March, draft's not till April, and they have these 3 months. So then they're like, oh, I have to be in my office to save my job to be at my desk, so I might as well look at these numbers. And then you like talk to them in OTAs, and all they are about these numbers. And then season comes, and you lose a game, and then the numbers go right out the window. And I'm not blaming in this when I'm going to tell a story. I'm not blaming anybody for my injury. My injury happened because of a freak thing, right? But our coach was a huge, and I really like Keith. I do. I really enjoy Keith at the Jets O-line coach, but his whole thing, and I get it, it's like that whole finish mindset. So like when you're done with your block and that ball is past you, you burst, right? Like you're running after the ball. And in the game, and there's clips of whoever, he was at the Titans for Ben Jones. It was like a 30-yard patch, and you see Ben who's just hauling, down the field and running, and you're running a lot, and you're finishing. So you always want to be around the ball. You never know what's going to pop out, whatever. Well, so I really bought into that. I was like, this might be my last year. I'm buying it. So I was running everywhere, way more than everybody else. So I get hurt, and I'm in his office, and we're talking. He's like, yeah, I wish I would have looked at the data a little more and truly realized like how many more miles you were putting on versus everybody else. Like I would have saved you a little bit more in practice. And I was like, God, that's not why I got hurt. I didn't strain a calf or pull an Achilles or do a workload injury. I mean, it'd be maybe nice to have a couple of easier practices, but that's kind of the thing. Like he had that data, he saw it, but he was so worried about, the plays and getting the amount of double teams I needed with my guards, and I needed my reach blocks, and I needed to slide work, and I needed all this. So like those numbers didn't matter. But once I got hurt and they didn't have me, then those numbers, I was like, oh, well, shit, I wish I would have truly understood how much more you were doing and maybe I could have helped. And obviously with my injury, like I said, it wouldn't have helped. But, who knows? And 4 more weeks, what would have happened if I was still running on, 10,000 RPMs and doing, 3 more miles, everybody. But who knows? But it's that, like you said, they have all the data. They don't always look at it. And it seems to me always be a hindsight thing.
Oh yeah. I guess it's too late now, but it makes sense type of thing. Looking at it, maybe that wasn't the best approach, but then it's back to status quo and the normal.
Yeah. And you lose a game. It's like, all right, practice is back to this. And we're doing like 45 minutes of indie, you're busting heads, and you're like, well, should have won that game.
Yeah. I think like one of the most interesting things is not having played football for 3 years and then going back to the Colts last year for a little bit towards the end of the season. And it was like the ultimate fly on the wall, like in meeting rooms and like just taking it all in. And it was just like, I was expecting like there to be like, some changes at least with, how things were happening. It's just 3 years seems like a long time to be gone from something, especially in the NFL that, progresses, but it was more or less, a lot of the same stuff. It was nice. Shane Steichen with the Colts, he did a really good job limiting, like crazy workload in practice, got a ton of walkthrough reps at like good tempos and stuff, but it was extremely manageable. Like not a lot of banging or, stuff that just takes a big toll on your body. But the crazy thing is like from my rookie year in 2010 to last year, end of 2023, we're looking at 13 years of difference. And there was nothing different about meeting, like in watching tape as an offensive line. It was always the same. And I'm like, there's like crazy tools available now that you would think that there would be a better way to mentally watch the tape and put yourself in a true position to see an entire defense and see things shake out. And one of the things that I think would be an amazing tool for players, like instead of sitting there and, having, your 4-tiered tables or whatever chairs set up in a room with, your starters in the front and the second team back, just to be able to incorporate something that's immersive to where, if it would be, some kind of, virtual headset or like at least augmented headset where you can still see the classroom or whatever, but you could actually see things from your position instead of watching from that end zone shot. So you were always learning from the end zone shot. You'd watch the wide first to see if, the slot's topped and the shell of the defense, but then it was all about the end zone shot to see footwork and all that stuff. But one of the biggest parts about playing as an offensive lineman is being able to look and react quick without having to think. So you can just go through your footwork and your technique doesn't get thrown off. And there's nothing that builds on that in the meeting room. There's got to be a way to be able to have everybody be able to see the tape from the perspective of your position as a line. I know this is a kind of a tangent segue, but
I agree.
I mean, that'd be awesome.
Why can I not remember the team that put a camera on the quarterback had a GoPro right here?
Yeah.
So when
I know exactly what you're talking about. I forget who
when they had their quarterback meetings, like that they watched from that view. And it's fun for the fans to see like how little that quarterback can actually see when he throws a ball. But anyways, they would actually watch from that. And so, I think the hardest part about that is you can't strap even in practice, like maybe you could do it for walkthrough, but if you're thumping at all, like you can't put a GoPro on an offensive lineman's helmet
but what if you could build cams into a practice helmet? Like you got all that crazy tech. Think about all the technology that goes into like Tesla. Or like
I know. It's just then you're getting into weight, right? Because they're trying to make helmets as light as possible now.
Dude, I picked up my old helmet. I picked up some of my old helmets because we're packing up our house, and God, this thing's like a 6-pound weight on your head.
Yeah, dude. You like your neck still gets sore when you like really start putting a helmet on again, but not as sore. Like I grabbed my new one and I grabbed like my college one and I'm like, oh my God. And I like really sat and thought back to what my neck used to feel like when a camp or something started. I'm like, oh my God, I guess I don't have that anymore. But you wake up and you couldn't even pick your head up. You were so sore from your neck. And it makes sense. But yeah, the camera, I think the camera, they just add a lot of weight. So maybe, but I mean,
Figure out how to if you get Tony Stark
well,
on it.
shit. Yeah, you got spy cameras right there, and like a little nanny cam and a teddy bear should weigh nothing. You can just put it. But no, I agree in it, and I think that's the hardest part for a young player, right? So part of my job this year, other than being a football player, was to help the second round pick center coming in, who's, they told me when I came back to the Jets, hey, this kid's the future. Like, we would love it if part of your job is to help him get right. I was like, perfect. Like, he'll be part of my legacy, whatever. Joe Timmons, a phenomenal human. I really like him. So I was like, easy, we'll get this done. So we're in there in the meeting room. He's, boom, knocking out who the mic point is and where the slide's going and where the aid is going and whatnot. And he's just hammering it all out. And then you get out to the field and, as one of my favorite sayings, because I don't understand it, the shit hits the fan. And he figured it out, obviously. But when camp first started and he had all these calls to make and he had a young offensive line around him, like, it just, he was a cat would get his tongue and he'd come back and I'd be like, Tip, man, like, I didn't hear you make it. He's like, dude, I was like, you made that, like, you and I sat and we went over that and you hammered that like it was nothing. And so it goes back to looking at something from the end zone versus you got some dudes, breathing on you, you're trying to block and you got these guys next to you like, hey, what's the call? What's the call? What's the call? And their mic's moving back and forth because he's doing this. And it's different. And it takes experience to where, like, for yourself or myself, like, that's nothing. Like, we know everything now, but it took us, a couple of years to get there. And so for a young guy to come in, I think that augmented would be huge for them to get truly immersed into what a play feels like without having to be there. Because even a walkthrough, like, when that intensity's low, it's so easy when your heart rate's low. And like the whole thing, I'd be like, Tip, man, you just got to lower your heart rate. You got to lower your heart rate. You got to lower your heart rate. Because I could damn near see the veins in his neck when he gets to the line of scrimmage puff up because, it's so intense and your blood pressure is so high. And it is so hard to think when your blood pressure is that high, and it takes practice.
Yeah, man, you layer on that stress and it becomes fight or flight mode, and it's hard to think through the front part of your brain when you just want to go, just want to rip it.
Yeah.
That's the biggest, and that's the biggest thing that separates the NFL from all other levels of playing football is how fast you have to process everything. That's why you see, freak athletes fail when they get to the NFL. They come out of college and they bust, and so they just can't keep up from a processing standpoint. A lot of times, people probably just think that, maybe he wasn't as good as he should have been, or maybe he slacked off, didn't take it seriously. But you need a good computing processor up in the noggin to be able to be successful. And, reps help with that, obviously. But yeah, if you could instead of taking the iPad home and just going through game tape, watching on the iPad, if you could, see everything happen from outside of your face mask and what you're looking at, it'd be sweet. And the technology is there.
It would be sweet.
Technology is there to do it. I think just no one's done it yet. I think that'll happen eventually.
Yeah, no, and it's getting there because I know, like I said, the quarterbacks this last year, like, they had the goggles, the goggles to really do that. They didn't use it much because the cameras, like, it all goes back to right now is the filming aspect. Like, they have the tool to view it. I don't think they have the best tool to shoot it, to get to that view. And I think that's where the technology is going to come up. But fun. Do you remember, I don't know if you probably remember this story, but you and I were sitting there in the Denver weight room. And I think we were like I got two stories about this, but we were foam rolling and we were having a conversation like this. We're talking about, technology and supplements and training, whatever you and I used to talk about, which feels like I'm back in the Denver. I should have a foam roller right now with these conversations. But we had talked about cleats and how poor offensive lineman cleats are or were back then. And I think you and I were talking about making a company that did 3D printed cleats because they scanned our feet all the time. You
Yeah.
remember they had scanned our feet, they
Yeah.
scanned our feet, they scanned our feet. Never really did anything with it until this year. They finally have an offensive line cleat that after 5 years of scanning our feet, Nike went and built a cleat around the average scanned offensive line cleat. And I don't know if you wore it when you're at the Colts, but it was fantastic. Like it was finally a cleat where it didn't take me 2 weeks of serious foot pain to get broken in. Like it took a day or two and that cleat was ready to rock and it was phenomenal. But it took me back. I was like instantly thought I was like, man, Jared and I should have started that 3D printing cleat company because it would have made a killing because these cleats are amazing now.
Yeah.
But they finally, after all that data, like you said, they collected data for 5 years. It took them 5 years of data collecting to finally make a cleat for an offensive lineman that was half decent. It was incredible. 5 years of data.
And you think you could like, yeah, it wouldn't take 5 years. It should just be like scan your foot and not only just, scan your foot from a true, put your foot on a scanner and get an image, but have a stand on a force plate and see where all the pressure is being put on
Yeah.
your feet and be able to modify it that way and to, put the spikes where you need them and yeah, all that stuff. But you would, you think futuristically like that, but you got to be pragmatic and know that, hey, this is not
Right.
probably going to happen, even though it'd be nice.
Yeah, it'd be sweet if it did.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that you're having to do right now rehabbing your leg? I guess what are some of what do you think are like the best things that are helping you get back from your injury?
Mine right now is really getting that VMO back. So what's funny is one of the best things for both my knee injuries to help with knee pain and getting back from that injury is a leg extension. Like a classic seated bodybuilding leg extension that my entire life up till I hurt my knee was like, this machine is terrible for your knee health. It hurts your knees. It is terrible for your knee health. Now it's the one thing I have to hit every with that. And I mean, obviously like the TKEs and all that kind of stuff. But I need that leg extension to build my VMO and to get my knee used to that pressure of being at like, this degree and having a ton of pressure on it. Cause it's, when you're not isolating it and I'm doing a TKE or a split squat or a single, like my hip will and glute will just dominate and they can help mechanically with moving through that motion to where my VMO and doesn't really need to work. But unless I'm in that seated leg extension, which I, for my entire life, for 22 years, 23 years, was told this is a terrible thing for your knees. And then it's like the one thing I need to really get my knee back to healthy. And it's kind of funny how stuff like that works. But I'm not doing anything like super out there, I'm not like the Russian. I'm not Drago doing crazy science stuff. But the stuff that's helped, so I say that, and now the blood flow restriction's been
Dude, I
absolutely huge.
love
Which,
BFR, man. BFRs. I hit the BFR
yeah,
stuff
BFR is
in my
awesome.
weight room here at home. It's amazing.
Yeah. Now that I just said all that, I'm like, yeah, but now I put a cuff on connected to a thing that manages blood flow. But so other than BFR, I haven't done anything super crazy by any means, but just classic getting strength back. And, it's ligament stuff. So once they were healed, they were strong. It's just getting the muscles to trust it. And that brain, that to get your subconscious to allow yourself to use your leg the way it's supposed to be used after it's had such a traumatic thing to it. I think that's always a hard part to get that symmetry back is always tough. But yeah, BFR, let's dive into BFR. That's awesome. I love
Yeah,
it.
man. I got my smart cuffs that I use and they're sweet. So basically, if you're working on a leg or an arm, you can use them really well with limbs. It's harder to hit like trunk BFR because you can't really restrict that blood flow. But you put this cuff that pumps up and restricts a certain amount of blood flow either into the leg or the arm. And you're able to do high repetition with really lightweight, but still elicit that hypertrophy response from the muscle to build muscle tissue up. And not only that, but you get a ton of blood flow after you take the cuff off. So I've been playing around with it a lot, not only just for like hypertrophy, but like during like warmups. I was looking at a cool article that dealt with sprinters
Yep.
doing hamstring curls and leg extensions before running, and they had
Oh,
like
that's interesting.
it had a significant decrease in soft tissue pulls.
Really? Because they just had
Yes,
so much blood and
because they had good blood flow through there. I'm not sure, the protocol that they were using, if it was pretty mild just for some general blood
right.
flow, or if they were hitting it hard before. But from what I've gathered and just from experience, like you get that pump within that muscle group, and you do get so much blood flow through there, and that tissue becomes really activated, and it becomes hard to damage it. I actually brought my smart cuffs with me to Indy when I was
Did you
playing
really?
down there, and I'd hit it. Yeah, hit it before practices. Sometimes I was only active for one game, but hit it before the game just to get everything going, and you get a pretty sick pump going, so it looks like
Oh
you're
yeah.
you're
Yeah, you look
jacked.
cool.
Yeah, yeah. Look good,
Yeah,
feel good, play good.
that's a part of it, you know. Yeah, like you break the huddle and you see some dude with, you know, bodybuilding arms, you're like, damn, he might be a monster, but it's always kind of funny. I mean, Aaron Donald was built that way, but you get some guys that are pretty sloppy bodies or little to no muscle tone, but they're just freaky athletes. And you're like, how does a guy that looks like you do what you just did to me? And it's pretty incredible. Yeah, no, the blood flow, I really like it because, and also to the, like, I mainly use it when I've had an injury and, it's to a joint. So you can't weight that joint super heavy, so you got to build that muscle as fast as you can without heavy load. So, but I've never, once I'm healthy, I kind of tend to stop using it. And I think it'd be interesting, when I'm done playing, when I want to look good with my shirt off, how much I'll use it to because I'm my elbows are pretty wore out, my knees hurt, like I just like you, I love to train, I love working out, I love the physical activity. So like how much blood flow out restriction I'll use to help those joints that as a 31-year-old, or hopefully when I'm done 33, 34, 35-year-old, are definitely more wore out than the average person my age. But how can I still train, and be able to do that at it's a high level I want to. So I'm definitely excited to play around with it.
Do you ever look at any of the knees over toes guys stuff?
Oh, well, so I do, but I think everybody in the NFL is like everyone I talk to now is, he's got to be like the most utilized thing that the NFL does, that had made such a switch to now, like everybody has lifters in the weight room because they want to do a narrower squat stance. Everybody's doing, backward sled pulls, and everybody's doing just, back to just like true VMO training stuff, where before it was West Side Barbell inspired everything. I feel like that,
Yeah.
and it's wide stance squats and vertical shins and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I love knees over toes.
Dude,
Amazing.
so try doing BFR backward sled drags.
Oh, I can't imagine.
It's
That's
fantastic.
oh
Like you're
my
talking about
god.
VMO activation.
Oh
And just
man.
to backtrack, VMO, anybody who doesn't know the VMO, it's the vastus medialis. It is that teardrop shaped muscle on the inside of your thigh, just above your knee. And it's a huge activator of the knee. You need that thing to fire for the knee to function properly. And a lot of people that deal with knee pain and knee issues have significant issues with their VMO. And so when Connor's talking about VMO, that's what he's talking about. And yeah, Ben Patrick with knees over toes has really brought that to light. And I think, I think the best marketing tool he used was just all those crazy dunks that he had in those videos.
Oh,
Like,
the him dunking and then like landing and then going and doing that, like that stretcher is like knees are on the ground, and he lays back and then he stands back up, and I'm like, oh my
yeah, you're like,
god.
oh my gosh, my knee just ripped in half in
Oh,
my mind.
and then the I think the fascinating part is, so if he just did that, right, I'd be like, oh, he's a freak of nature, this makes no sense, that I'm a 200-pound guy, I'm not going to do that. But then him to show where he was at before he did this, and he had chronic knee pain, and I can't remember if he had or whatever the arthritis is or not, but I know he had like chronic knee pain, couldn't jump, couldn't play basketball, and I believe his wife was a figure skater and was the same way, like she had retired from figure skating because her knees hurt so bad. And now that they both, he came up with this system or whatever you want to call it, they're both back to being the better at their sports than they ever were before because they have no knee pain. It's incredible, very incredible.
It is. Yeah. I try to incorporate a fair amount of his stuff into my lower body
Yep.
lifts, especially. I like the ATG split squats. I think those are really good because not only does it activate the VMO and that kind of that movement of pushing off through the foot, but like the hip extension on the backside of
Mm-hmm.
it is huge for me. Like I feel just as a massive stretch going into that ATG split squat that is weird because it's like it's stretching, but you're loaded with weight. So it's active at the same time. Yeah. And I think it's great. I think it's cool. I like his program a lot. I think there's something that's left to be had as far as his upper programming, but I love
I
his.
haven't followed his upper at all.
Yeah,
It's all been knees for me so far.
yeah, it's good, man. And with that too, that program is so different for like our world of like thought of like just loading up a bunch of weight and moving it
Yeah,
on a
so
bar
different.
because it like humbles you because you have to start so basic. I feel
Yeah.
like I've been doing Nordics for a year and a half, almost 2 years, and I don't know if I can do one complete Nordic. Like
Oh,
I've tried hitting like eccentrics loaded with a med ball, done like band assisted Nordics, and I'm getting better at them, but it's those things are so hard.
and we're pretty, heavy upper body wise, and like the angles that we have to hit being, I mean, you're way taller than I am. Like even those angles that, just from a leverage standpoint, like that's so much. But you see like a guy like Tyreek Hill who has freaky hamstrings, or Christian McCaffrey, watch them do Nordics. It blows me away on what they do. Like they hands at their side, they go down, they like touch their nose on the ground and they go right back up and they're straight as a board. I am so jealous. I am so jealous when they can do that. It's something when I'm retired, I would love to be like 250 and say I can do 4 or 5 Nordics, but
Maybe that's
my
maybe
hamstrings have been the weakest part of my lower body. Like I'm a heavy quad dominant, heavy glute dominant on the posterior athlete, and I've notoriously weak hamstrings. They love to cramp up whenever I do hamstring work. They just always cramp on me, and so I keep training them. It's just not a lot of fun, but I do it because I know I need it. But I would love to be able to do just lock my legs in, knock out 3 Nordics, and I'd feel incredibly accomplished.
yes, I've made it. I've made it.
I've done it. I'm an
I think
athlete. I'm an
yeah, that's
athlete.
how I'm going to draft my fantasy football team this year. I'm just going to go based
Purely
off
hamstrings.
of I'm going to go and look and see skill position guys doing Nordics and whoever's got the best looking Nordics, they're getting
Yep.
drafted.
Well, you know what? I just read an article, or about Christian Watson is the wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers
Yeah.
from North Dakota State, I believe, and he's had hamstring issues his whole entire career, and he's done everything in the world to fix them, and he just keeps pulling his hamstrings, keeps pulling his which he's a high speed guy, and like those high speed guys always have hamstring issues. And it turns out, because I'm sure once, obviously you pull your hamstring once, it heals, you keep going, and you start getting this asymmetry. And so he did all these things, and there's a University of Wisconsin got a grant from the NFL, and I think Christian put a bunch of his own money into it. And he spent like a week there, and they figured out that, it wasn't, it was the asymmetry of his hamstrings, which I'm sure they figured out through the Nord board, or I don't know if you ever use one of those. The Jets are pretty big on the Nord board and stuff like that. He was like 20% off on his asymmetries, which is huge. You want that healthy range is, I think, 6% is where you want to stay within. And as 20%, like you're guaranteed injuries, and that doesn't matter if it's hamstrings or it's, in my opinion, what force plates are used for, to see those asymmetries with your quads or whatnot. But yeah, you need to, the best way to, I think, draft fantasy would be to figure out who has the tightest asymmetries and go about it that way, because they're the least likely to get injured. So
Right. Best
that'd be,
abilities,
yeah.
availability.
Yeah. Who has the most symmetry, because they're going to be there every week. You know what I mean? And then second tier is who has the strongest hamstring.
Yeah. And now I'm thinking like, because I don't have the NFL weight room at my disposal anymore, just got my little home gym. So I'm always trying to figure out like, what's a way to quantify something
Yeah.
back in the weight room? And there's actually an
Yeah.
interesting
See,
tip.
you need to get sponsored by Force Plates or
I
Nordboard or
know,
something.
man. Well,
Get the podcast going.
I was trying to like chat GPT my own DIY hacked force plate thing, getting parts. And it was like,
How did that
I don't
go?
think, well, I found, so Travis Trevino, the Olympic trainer, was saying that an easy way to do it is to get 2 quality scales and put them next to each other and then go through like an RDL or a squat or whatever movement it is and try to stay within 5 pounds of output on each scale.
Oh, that's fat. That's actually a really good idea.
Yeah.
But okay, so how much does a really high quality scale cost? Because
I don't
what are
know.
force?
I guess it depends on the size of the
Right, that's
athlete.
true.
I mean, because
Yeah.
for us, obviously, we would need, a good scale. I feel like,
Well, you're
yeah, I
probably
don't
pulling
know.
two of those ones that would be like in an
You would
NFL
probably want
weight.
two like analog scales, is my guess. That is,
Oh
used
yeah.
like a needle. Like I feel like a digital scale might be tricky. I don't know. My
Well,
scale
those
knowledge
digitals,
is not a scale.
yeah, the scale, the one you like buy at Walmart and step on just to track your weight. That was, but the ones that they have at like the ones in an NFL locker room always were those like big, huge squares, and they had the
Yep.
little thing up top, and they're incredible. You can zero them out, and they're incredibly accurate. But you get to it, I bet they're like probably $1,500 a piece. But so then you're at 3 grand. And
Yeah,
what's
and
a force plate?
you
Like
might as well buy a
six or
force plate. Yeah.
yeah, might as well just buy a force plate at that point.
Yeah, dude, I
But
got this sweet. Speaking of weight room tech, I was trying to figure out a portable weight room like for
yep,
our sprinter van, like when we're taking it on trips, just because you can't count on an Airbnb having a weight
no,
room. So I looked and I was trying to figure out, okay, could you mount a tonal to the back door of the sprinter van? It's, no,
that's a
that
good
thing's
idea.
yeah, but it was
Too
too
heavy.
heavy and it would be
Yeah.
weird. So then I was looking at like tonal competitors. And there's this company that popped up. It's called Vitruvian. They were out of Australia, I think. And it's basically like a tonal, except it's not wall mounted. It's on the ground, but it has the two magnetic resistance pulleys, and you just
Yep.
pull them from the ground. And it was actually, I think the tonal can go up to 220 pounds total resistance. And this thing was able
Yep.
to go up to 220 pounds per cable. So you
Oh,
could pull,
we're almost
yeah,
500.
you could pull 440 off that,
Yeah.
which is pretty insane because the equipment itself weighs like 60 pounds. But anyway, it's awesome.
That's
I can
all.
throw it in the van. We took it with us. It's sweet. And there's some like incredible modes to play around with it. Like
Yeah.
you can put like progressive loading, or you can go like eccentric only to where you get to the top of the movement and it loads on the weight. And then you just have to muscle it down basically.
Do you know of a guy? He's a Midwest cross. You should follow him. His name's Sam Dancer. Incredibly good friend of mine. Incredible athlete. And I'm looking up. He's a big sprinter van guy. He uses. Let me see what this one's called. What'd you say the one you're using is called?
Vitruvian.
Yeah, that's what he uses. He's like their athlete. He's a
Oh,
Vitruvian
nice.
athlete.
Dude,
And he's like
it's
he's a CrossFitter. I'm like, you're describing it. I'm like, man, that sounds like Sam because Sam will do some crazy loaded stuff, and he was like telling me that it can get up to like almost 500 pounds, and he's yeah, like he's doing like front squats and stuff on them and all that. So yeah, I've been meaning to look into it because Sam's such a big proponent of it. So
it's nuts, man. I've been hitting my like ATG split squats on it,
yep,
and it hits different. Like
does it?
just yeah, the resistance, the eccentric resistance, especially just like through if you throw it in old school mode, which is supposed to be like, just like a normal cable.
Yep.
For whatever reason, that resistance downward just feels so much harder.
It's yeah, because it's
It's
probably just
wild.
like actively pulling you almost like bands more
Yeah, it
probably.
is.
Yeah, like
It's exactly what it feels like. It's exactly what it
yeah,
feels like. And there's a bunch of cool stuff to do. I feel like they could take that technology piece and then if they incorporated some kind of AI machine learning within it to know
could real
what
oh
yeah, well then
yeah.
you could measure like force output to
Oh
put
yeah,
it
that
at optimal like resistance. So you're always
right.
training in that right zone for
That would be
strength growth or
that would be fascinating.
yeah, I was like, man, if I was that company, I would just sink all my money into that,
The AI
trying to be the first
completely
machine that could throw.
optimized
Yeah, you don't even have to
100%.
program your weight on there, and just let that thing program the weight for you to put you in the right zone for the lift you're doing.
Yeah, like after 3 reps, it can learn everything it needs to know about you, and yeah, that'd be fascinating.
Well, dude, it's really nice for BFR stuff too because you can literally change it in 1 pound increments. So you can like you
Oh
can
yeah,
take it
so you're not
from if
changing
you're
in
doing light,
fives, like
yeah. Because when you're doing
yeah,
BFR stuff, you're looking to be at like what is it like between 10 and 20% of a 1 rep mag. I forget what it is
yeah,
exactly, but it's
very
very light.
small.
Like you take a very small
Yeah,
percentage, yeah,
less than 15%.
very lightweight, which then becomes hard to scale that if you're using dumbbells that move in 5 pound increments. You're just making a
Right.
huge jump. So if you're able to dial it in from 6 pounds to 7 pounds, it's a big difference.
Yeah.
And it's been, I thought I was just going to be using it for our trips. I actually use it for half my workout now.
Yeah.
It's nice. Save
Yeah.
space too.
Yeah. And then Sam's a CrossFit competitor, and he uses it all the time. And when you think of CrossFit, you think of barbells and kettlebells and pull-up rigs. You don't think of technology and
No,
cable
yeah, you think
machines.
like old school, getting gritty, ripping calluses
Yeah,
off your hands with
exactly.
kettlebells, and
And he uses it. I mean, he's older. He's in his 40s, so he competes in the Masters, and he's won the Masters a couple of times. And I mean, when he was in the normal CrossFit, he was always like that strong athlete that like dominated like a deadlift or a clean ladder or whatever. And he was just heavy. He was, he competed at I think 225 or something. So he was like 25 pounds heavier than everybody else. But a fantastic friend. He helps him and his wife do an incredible amount with the charity organization that I helped start and stuff. And they've been absolutely critical in that. So yeah, he uses it and he loves it. So yeah.
nice. What kind of charity are you working with?
So I helped. So there's an organization in Fargo called TNT, which it started out as a gymnastics gym, and then they realized that the gymnastics gym with all the soft equipment and trampolines and sensory stuff was really good for people with special needs and autism and mental disorders. So we went in, and my family helped start the gym with my cousin being a gymnast, and the CEO Kim reached out when I was a young player in Denver and was like, would you have any interest in helping, kind of being one of our champions? And I was like, I'd love to. I was like, but and at this time, and I'm still, like I said, friends in CrossFit and all this stuff. And I was like, it'd be fun to do a competition where you have people with special needs on the floor with people that don't have special needs, and they can compete together, and you can truly see how amazing these athletes are. I was helping with the Special Olympics weightlifting in college one time, and this individual gets down and his coach helps him to the bench, and he's looking at the crowd. He had Down syndrome, and he's waving to his his family, and he has a big smile on his face because people with Down syndrome are the happiest people in the world. And he gets on the bench, and I'm sitting there, and I was loading weights and side spotting, and we had 285 or 305, 315. It was a lot of weight. I was incredibly impressed. And this individual was not a very big individual. And we kind of, the three of us spotters looked at each other, and one being Mitch Morris was the center for, well, now the Jaguars, was at Kansas City, and then the Bills, and now Jacksonville. One of my best friends, he was the one that got us all involved. And I was like, Mitch, man, you ready? We got a spot. This is a lot of weight. And this individual, smiling, laughing, gets on the bench, locks in, completely goes into serious mode, unracks it, weight's done. Like, the three of us looked at each other like, this is incredible. Like, people need to know how truly amazing these athletes are. So we have a competition called the Able Games that shows these individuals their capabilities, and everyone has a blast, and it's truly inspiring. And you definitely leave that weekend feeling different than you did walking in, and it's incredible. But that actually morphed into what we have Able now, because people were coming, hey, our athletes, these individuals with special needs, they want to they love to win and compete just like you and I do. So like, we want to train year round. Like, how can we get this into schools? And TNT had schools bring individuals with special needs to them to train, but it's expensive, it's time consuming. So, okay, how do we bring this to the schools? So the amazing team at TNT has created a curriculum that schools can now buy to bring Able to their schools. And so what we're growing right now, we're in New Jersey, being that I was at the Jets, and New Jersey's done a phenomenal job adapting it. Spent a lot of time in high schools last year. North Dakota, Minnesota, around where I'm from, are adapting it. And hopefully we can get it into all schools everywhere. We can have Able Games competitions all around the country. But it's been truly amazing, because now we're bringing these classes into schools where they're partnered. So you have an individual with special needs and a non-special needs student partnered together. So it gets that student more comfortable with individuals with special needs, because it can be intimidating. You never want to set them off, or you don't want to do, but you realize it's just like anybody else. If you're upset, all you got to do is say a couple of things, and you learn how to calm an individual down, and it's not intimidating. And so we've been hearing these stories of schools that integrate it, and they're like, oh, like these students that never would even say hi to people with special needs they're their best friends. They're taking them to prom. They're fighting them over on the weekends. And the schools have just that were very separated. Students with special needs are over here, able body over here. Now they're like fully integrating, and it's something we didn't, always foresee. We were kind of more looking at the health aspect of this and, the teamwork aspect, but the way it's brought people together has been truly amazing. So, and it's been growing quick, and we're excited about it.
That's awesome. Yeah, that sounds like a
Appreciate the plug.
yeah, dude. That's a good resource to put your time into, man. That's
it's been fun. My wife and I have enjoyed it.
Using your platform to make the world better, dude.
Trying to.
Well, Connor, man, I appreciate you joining the show today, dude. And
thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Wish you the best of luck this upcoming season, wherever you may land. Hopefully you have a Super Bowl ring in your future.
I sure hope so.
All right, man. I'll talk to you later.
Awesome. Thank you so much.